Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I wanted to just do a quick hello, saludos de Brazil, Jorge Sarmientos, mi alumno, my student, Jorge Sarmientos in Brazil, and he's probably the furthest away from any of us tonight. So, muchas gracias de estar con nosotros.
Good evening, maestro.
Talk to him in Spanish because I need to practice desperately.
Yeah.
So it was enjoyable having him as my student, which unfortunately was short-lived due to the situation. Listening to the performance of the Rachmaninoff, which was played by Gavin George, as I was waiting, and maybe you heard some of it, brought back, it's sort of sad because we're not performing now, and how important it is to all of us, all musicians, to play for live people and live setting. And not only was it exciting and sad to hear, but it also brought back just a little bit of the anxiety of the performance. And I'm sitting here and let's not be behind here and make sure this is in tune and make sure this tempo is right. Even though I'm sitting here, I can't do anything about it. But just remembering that was really, really quite something. And what's the word? Vicarious experience of my own experience, which is sort of funny. So anyway, we're going to be talking about a career in music, a career as a conductor. And I'm going to go, since we have 6 sessions, I'm going to go way back to the beginning and sort of build how this all happened and how I wound up in front of this wonderful orchestra. And as I like to say, when I auditioned for the Figaro Symphony, the only thing I knew about it was a bunch of roller coasters in the middle of Lake Erie. That's all I knew. But I grew to not only enjoy, not roller coasters, you won't get me on one of those, but enjoying the community and the wonderful new friends that I made. And I just remember Ann Voigt, who was on the, I think she was president of the board then with Jamie Steineman, came to some Pops concerts. And it was because of Ann and Jamie that I was interested in pursuing this position or accepting the position, because I saw that I had this really great leadership and commitment. And I said, well, this is something I think can happen. And I've been extremely proud of what the Figaro Symphony has been able to accomplish. So going back to the early stages and how I even wound up doing what I do is, like most of us, I was born at a young age. And I'm from, oh, Pat is here. Hi, Pat. She's not showing herself though. In Bayonne, New Jersey. I am a baby boomer, and my father was in the Army and was driving to San Diego in 1945, probably to go to Japan. And the war ended, and he turned around and drove back. And so a couple of years later, I won't say how many, it doesn't really matter. Here I am. So I came from decidedly not musical family, not unmusical, but music lovers for sure. I had an uncle who played timpani and drum set in vaudeville before moving on to his final job. But he was not a blood relative. He was a uncle-in-law, and but he was quite a musician. He could play anything in the key of C. And we would go to his house and enjoy playing. So my brother, by the time it was time for me to play an instrument, was already quite an accomplished pianist at 14. And here I was at 9. And they knew if they gave me the piano, it would never stick. There was just no way. I would get discouraged early, and that would be the end of it. So they gave me the clarinet. And they said, you must practice the clarinet 1 hour a day for a year, at which point you can decide whether you want to continue or not. So we're going to relive one of those early scenes. And, you know, practicing an hour a day when your teacher gives you 6 notes can be sort of painful. So we're going to sort of reenact those early days of clarinet playing. So they gave me 6 notes, mind you. So this is maybe what the scene was like. 6 notes an hour a day. I tell you, I knew those 6 notes after a week. And then the following week, there's a registry key on the clarinet, which gets you to the next, so it's not an octave, it doesn't matter, it's a 12th above the note that you're playing. And this only compounds the possibilities for disasters, because if you don't cover the whole completely, you get a very not particularly pleasant sound. So here's week 2. And then the following week, they gave me even more notes. I was a quick learner, as you can see. So by this time, my brother was already playing in dance band and also playing. I came across an old program of his when he was maybe 15 years old, playing 5 movements on the piano from the Nutcracker. And I saw the program. It was really sort of sweet to see that. You know, I always wanted to play in the combo that they would come over to the house. Arthur played the piano. We had a drummer, whoever. And I begged him, I said, please let me play. So okay, we'll let you play. So I'm going to play the song. I want you, if you know the song, or if you want to unmute yourself, I want you to tell me the name of the song that I played with them. I didn't play it as well when I was 11 years old, I can tell you. Anyone know that song? Nobody's unmuted, so I guess you're all much too young to know that song. Anyway, Jorge, do you know it? It's definitely a Latino song. Does it sound familiar even, or not really?
Yeah, it sounds familiar, but I don't remember.
Okay, it's called Perfidia.
Oh, I see.
It's one of those old tunes that was played as sort of a cha-cha or a rumba or something like that. So anyway, so I got to play with the band. So that was, of course, a lot of fun. And as I said, I would take clarinet lessons with the local guy. And he used to, I just happen to have this pencil from some reason. This is what those pencils look like when he would give me lessons, because he would pound them against the music stand to help me with my rhythm. Frankie Main. And interesting, in those days, a lot of the guys played violin in the 30s. I'm not that old, but in the 30s, they would play the violin. But then in order to get more work, they would play a wind instrument also. So a lot of the old cats who played trumpet or clarinet or saxophone actually started off as violinists, interestingly enough. So anyway, so I went going into high school. I played in but after a year, I said, I didn't quite understand the directions. I said, do I have to stop playing after a year? And they said, no, you don't understand. You have to play for a year, but we're happy to have you continue. So I did. And we used to go down to the Jersey Shore, or we like to say the Jersey Shore. And we went to Belmar, New Jersey. We had a place to stay. The whole family, we had a large family. My father was the youngest of 8. My mother was the youngest of 7. And so we had these huge gatherings on the Topolo side of the family down the Jersey Shore. We go to the beach. And then when I was starting at 10 years old, we went to the Catskill Mountains, which I'm told is making a resurgence now. That was a place in New York State, and with the big hotels, Grossinger's and Kutcher's and Nevele, and we used to go up there. And then Um, that's when I was 15, however, I was sent, this was the biggest, well, you know, there's always a big moment in anyone's life. For me, I went to a camp called Indian Hill, which is in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. And it was there that all of a sudden people were playing music that I loved. And I got so turned on to music at this point. Now, before then, not only was I playing in the dance band, but there was a group called the Bayonne Little Symphony. Now, and we would play, I guess we rehearsed once a week, and it was a odd combination of instruments. I remember that. And looking back, God knows what we sounded like. But we played concerts, and you know, during this time, we're able to. I dug up some old movies, some old programs from when I was a teenager, playing in the Bayonne Little Symphony, and then, but going to this camp was really quite a turn on to me to symphonic music. They took us to Tanglewood, they took us to Jacob's Pillow, which is a big dance place, ballet and such. And one of my fellow campers, okay, you ready for this? His first name was Arlo. Can anyone tell me what his last name is? Come on, unmute yourself. You're not that young. Arlo who?
Guthrie.
Right. Arlo Guthrie was a fellow camper of mine. And you're not even my age, Trisha, and you know Arlo Guthrie. Excellent. Yeah, so he was there. And it was funny, in those days we had record players. Actually, my daughter got a record player for Christmas. She wanted to have a record player so she can do vinyl, and she's got a record player. And so I used to play along with recordings, you know, we go around, not 78s, thank you, but 33s. And so here's another tune that I like to play. See if any of you recognize this. Anybody recognize that tune? Somebody. Trish, you can answer even though you're on staff. Actually, if you don't know the tune, listen to Michael Schertz's program, because it's a Dave Brubeck tune called Take Five.
Take Five, that's right. I recognize the tune, but I couldn't come up with the title.
That's quite all right. And Dave Brubeck would do unusual things, as Michael would tell you, because what kind of music is in 5/4 time? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. So the piece is in E flat minor, but my turntable was so weird that it was sort of in E minor. So I learned to play the piece in E minor. Nowadays, this would not happen. So here I am at this camp, and believe it or not, does anyone know the name of the restaurant in Stockbridge that inspired an Arlo Guthrie song? You can get anything you want at whose restaurant? Alice's Restaurant. That was a Arlo Guthrie tune, and there really was an Alice's Restaurant in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. So this was really a great thing for me to have a chance to go to this camp surrounded by kids doing music, art, dance, and drama. And, you know, and girlfriends and the whole 9 yards. It was quite a great experience. So, but even despite all that, when I got back, I played in all-state orchestra, I played regional band and regional orchestra, opera festival. I did all these things. And I also bought what are called arrow scores. Arrow scores are the full scores of the symphonic music, and there would be an arrow pointing to whoever had the melody. So if you listen to Beethoven Fifth, might start with everyone playing da 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 da, and then first violins, ba 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 ba, second violin, ba 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 ba, whatever. It would just jump around and point to whoever had the melody. So I would play along with the arrow scores, which also helped me tremendously with transposition. Without getting too technical, the clarinet is in B flat, And in order for me to play in C, I have to transpose. And in order for me to play horn in F or trumpet in D, I had to transpose even more. So I was laying down a real foundation of learning how to read a score, which ultimately was going to be a very big deal for me. And not only that, was at camp, did I play Take Five and play the clarinet, the orchestra didn't have a bassoon player. So guess who they recruited to play the bassoon? And the funny thing was that my technique was so limited that there were certain notes I couldn't play because they were too high. So I had to change the octave of the note. Well, fortunately, I didn't remain a bassoon player, because that was, although a lot of bassoon players start on flute or saxophone or clarinet. But fortunately, the bassoon was not in my future. And so we'll just leave it at that. So does anyone please have questions, comments? All right, I know this is turning into a monologue, which I guess is what it is, but any reaction or let me know there are people out there or they think that this is, how did you become a conductor when you play the bassoon and Take Five on the saxophone? Nobody.
Did you say you were 15?
When I went to Indian Hill.
Okay.
Music camp, not 50, 15. And I guess I was a sophomore. So as smitten as I was with symphonic music and with the orchestra, the clarinet, there's so many, it was sort of, I wound up going to Rutgers University, where I like to say I took up space. And at Rutgers, because nobody in my family went into music as a profession, it just didn't happen. But, I was there for a while and I said, you really should only go into music. I have to tell students or anyone who's thinking about it, if it's just so inexorable that you have to do it. And there's just no turning back. You have no choice because there's such a grip on you. And I'm afraid that's what happened to me. So after one semester at Rutgers, where oddly enough, I even did ROTC playing the tenor saxophone, which is sort of, in retrospect, sort of odd. And at one point we were marching around and it was so ridiculous. I started laughing and the guy says, "What are you laughing about?" or something like that. It felt like saying, because this is so stupid, but I didn't say anything. I was a good soldier. I was fine. So I wound up at Manhattan School of Music when it was in Spanish Harlem, it was called, on the east side of, Upper East Side, like 100th Street-ish, is where Manhattan School of Music was located. My father had passed away and I wound up commuting from home, from Bayonne, for 2.5 years. And, I played in orchestra and all the things that was a clarinet performance. Yes, as in the military, reserve officers training, whatever it's called. That was the question. And so I did everything in school that I needed to do. And in the meantime, I was playing saxophone and clarinet gigs for all the places in New Jersey that had these big catering halls. Now you think how the world has changed. You go to a wedding and there's a DJ. Well, back when I was involved with this business, there was a live band always at these affairs. And there was never any question about it. There was never, thank you. And there was never any question that there was going to be a band hired. And, I could play hundreds of songs, literally, from everything from Hello Dolly to Besame Mucho to a whole slew of songs. And I played weddings, I played bar mitzvahs, and this helped me work my way through school. Someone's speaker isn't working. Can you guys all hear me? Trish, can you hear me all right? Okay. so I wound up, um,
But she has a
doing all,
question.
oh, good.
She has a question. What do you most love doing? Conducting, performing solo, or with a group? Composing, arranging?
Conducting. There's no doubt about it. All the other stuff is great, and I love all the adjuncts. But you know, I'm a conductor who plays the clarinet. I'm not a clarinet player who picked up a stick. As simple as that. So, but the clarinet, of course, has been, you know, one of the points that I've always made. If you're a conductor, you better be able to play an instrument at least at one time before you start telling other people what to do. So I'm very, and a lot of people don't keep up their instruments too. They'll play into their 20s and then they let it go. But that was never the case for me, fortunately. So I digress. So during this time, actually, my brother played in these bands as well with me. But the goal of my father was for both of us, my brother and I, to work our way through medical school playing music. He only succeeded with one of us. My brother is Anne, I think you met him at one point. He played at one of the church service.
He played at Zion
Right.
Lutheran Church. Yeah,
Exactly.
you two did duets. Yes, that was great.
Right.
We met Arthur then. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Really.
And so he would play along with me and in this group, and then we went to the Catskill Mountains to play gigs and play at a hotel. And I wound up playing at the Flagler Hotel, was it? I mean, these things are so weird. I used to like to play golf. I would tee off, and then after my tee shot, I would take off my shoes and play the rest of the hole barefoot. Isn't that great things that you remember from many, many years ago? It was sort of funny. So anyway, so we were playing, I played in the band in the Catskill Mountains with my brother also played. And one night they had a talent show, and we played at this other hotel called Zalkin's Birchwood Lodge. Okay, so we would play in the band, and we would play dance music, and entertainers would come in, and we would never rehearse. We'd sit down with the music, say, this is the tempo, play from here, we get here, go back to here, and then take the coda, and say, okay, fine, next. And this stuff was really torn up. When I see people today complain about what their music looks like, I almost have to laugh, because what we played up was terrible. It was so worn and torn up and everything. But we did, you learn to be quick, and you learn to accommodate and figure out how to do this stuff. So one night there was a talent show, and the guests would get up and sing or play or whatever. Well, and there were about 6 of us, 5 of us in the band, whatever. And my brother was playing, and this guy got up to sing, and maybe he was singing "Be My Love," whatever, or "Because You." It was so terrible that we all were laughing so hard we had to walk backstage, and we left my poor brother on the stage all by himself to play for this poor guy. It was really something. Another time, I'm telling all these stories, I hope you find them at least amusing. Another time we were playing, and we had a comedian, and he was not good. Whatever reason, whatever he used, though, it just didn't go over at all. So afterwards, we went to the coffee shop. All the hotels had a coffee shop. Went to the coffee shop. He says to us, geez, you know, he sits down with us. You know, it just didn't go very well. I don't know. I gave him my best shot. It was Rodney Dangerfield, if you can believe that. And so it's, I wish you all would unmute, because if you laugh, it's great to have some input if someone's laughing. If you're not laughing, then I can see you laughing. So that's a good sign. So here I am playing in this band. And so at the time, my brother had already started medical school. And here I am, but we had so many Dr. Topolos in our family that I knew I would never be missed if I did not become a doctor. We had Dr. Arnold, Harvey, and Eddie were all ophthalmologists.
Yeah.
Harvey, Eddie, and Arnold were all doctors. Judy, my brother's wife, my sister-in-law, Arthur, and Irving. We had all sorts of Dr. Topolos. We didn't need another one, as it turned out. And I had no intention of going to medical school. And my family never really pushed me in that direction. And my mom used to say, my son, the doctor, and my son, the conductor. That was her, she was, I think, proud of both of us. Another thing that happened, which is sort of funny, at Zalkin's Birchwood Lodge, and these are all lessons in life that you accumulate and they become almost your own personal folklore. Now, the Zalkin's Birchwood Lodge was not Shangri-La of hotels, okay? So I happened to be hanging around the desk one day, and this couple comes in, and the owner was there, and they said, well, we're sort of looking for a place to stay. We're not sure what we're going to do, but we're still looking. And the owner says, we have everything. We have beautiful swimming pool. We have shuffleboard. We have great kosher meals. We have everything you could want. And they said, great, we'll stay here. It was such a crock of nonsense. This was not the great hotel. But to hear her say that, it was sort of funny, when you learn stuff like that. And she was very persuasive, and I'm sure they had a nice time. But to say that this was like the greatest hotel in the world was definitely a stretch. So that was sort of funny, as it turned out. So I'm just seeing where we are in the narrative, because I really want people to talk to me more and questions or comments, anything. Because right now it doesn't look like I'm heading for a conducting career at this point, does it? I'm getting that feeling. Jorge.
But you were staying at some great places. I mean, going up to the Catskills in that area, Strobridge, Massachusetts, those are really beautiful areas, even to this day.
Yeah, Stockbridge is especially nice.
Stockbridge, that's
what's it called? The Berkshire Mountains, where Tanglewood is, and all these other
Berkshire.
great places. Yeah, but quite frankly, I really didn't like playing the saxophone in the Catskill Mountains. And when I was 20 years old, I auditioned for a summer program with the North Carolina School of the Arts, which was 6 weeks in Siena, Italy. Siena, Italy is not the Catskill Mountains by any means. I auditioned, my first plane ride, when I think by the time my daughter was 20, she'd been to Europe probably 8 times and all across the country. This is my first plane ride at age 20. I remember looking out the window, wow, this is really exciting. It's a great view. And then they said, well, and I flew to North Carolina, and the pilot said, be ready. We're about to land at the Greenville, Winston-Salem, Hop Horn Airport. I said, welcome to the South. Here I am. North Carolina School of the Arts is like almost a reservoir of culture in the middle of this, where the music, and I think they had other disciplines besides music at the School of the Arts. But so I auditioned there, and they had this wonderful program in Siena, Italy. And it didn't matter actually if it was a good program or a bad program. I mean, just to be there at Siena, Italy was amazing. And fortunately, I was smart enough to say, what an opportunity to learn a foreign language. I'm going to be in Italy for 6 or 8, I think it was 6 weeks. What a great chance to learn Italian. And so in my typical crazed manner, and my father was one also who had incredible willpower, I just sort of threw everything aside, made flashcards, studied Italian for 2 months solid. And when I got there, wasn't amazing, but I didn't have to hang around with a bunch of American kids for 6 weeks. I can go out in the town and enjoy myself and meet some of the locals. So the summer in Siena, and as some of you who know me well, foreign languages, especially Italian, are near and dear to me. And I even, every Tuesday night, I have an hour and a half Italian conversation class that I do. And ultimately, as I started doing opera, this was a huge step for me. But just being in Siena, Italy was amazing. And I remember going to this restaurant at the Campo in the main square, and a Coke was 20 cents, a bowl of rice was 20 cents, and spaghetti was 20 cents. So maybe that dates me a little bit, but it was quite something. And in Siena, I don't know if any of you know about the Palio of Siena. The Palio is a horse race, essentially, but it's like nothing else you've ever seen. There are 17 contrade, which are districts of the city. And they all have colorful names like the elephant, the porcupine, the snail, the mountain lion, the unicorn. And so each one of them has their own little church, and there are 10 horses that get to run for the Palio. The Palio is a hand-painted Madonna. And if you win the Palio, you go back and that Palio winds up in your church of your particular district. And so people would say, oh, we had 3-4 days off. Where are you going for the Palio time? I said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to go see the Palio. So in the center of the square, there are 80,000 people, literally. And around, you ever hear the color burnt sienna? Burnt sienna is the brown dirt that they dig up and they cover the outside of the campo of the piazza with dirt for this horse race. This is not just a horse race. Well, before the Palio even starts, each contrada, each district takes its horse into the church to be blessed. If the horse happens to defecate on the altar, that's actually considered a good sign. Okay, this is the truth. I can't make this up. Okay, so they finally they run this race, and before the race even starts, each group comes in. They're dressed up in medieval costumes. They have a drummer and 2 flag people, and they wrap up the flags and they throw them to each other. It's an amazing spectacle, and all this culture just sort of seeped into me. And all I have to do is take the W off my name, and it's Italian, Tobilo. Simple. There's nothing to it. So here I am at this, just basking this and enjoying. The question is, do they still do this today? This is the first year that the Palio didn't happen, except for, I think, 2 or 3 years of World War II. The World War II period, obviously, it didn't happen either. This is the first year that the Palio's been canceled. And it happens on July 2nd and August 16th. And August 16th, I think, coincides with the Feast of the Assumption, if I'm not mistaken. And that's the one that. Oh wait, I've been to 3 Palios. I know 2 of them were the August 16th, and the Palio, and this goes back 300-400 years, and it's really quite something. And certain districts hate each other, certain districts like each other, and it's really quite something. And to make it even more bizarre is that the jockeys, the Fantini, are able to, they have wagers that they give to one another to bribe, and then the horses are drugged. It's total insanity, but it's a pageant that I'm sure if you go on the internet you can learn all about it. Palio, but that's the Palio. So anyway, I still would welcome some more input, because I've been doing this monologue for 45 minutes or 40 minutes since Trish did a nice introduction. Maybe she should have gone longer. I don't know.
Yeah, you cut me off, Carl.
I know, I did.
Well, I think it's great that you were in Italy when you were 20 years old. I mean, what a wonderful experience that must have been to be, and because you love languages so much, that's really that just had to be a really terrific experience. When you were there, did you have any interest in, did you start developing an interest in conducting, or was it more musical performance side?
No, well, both, but definitely conducting at that point. It was interesting too that I was playing in orchestra one day, and you know, it was such a small world. The conductor was Piero Bellugi, who conducted the Oregon Symphony, had a very nice, very prominent career. 40 years later, I met his son, who was teaching in the University of Florence, teaching the recorder, but that's another story. Anyway, so Bellugi walks in, comes up to the podium, and he says, he looks at the music, which he could have done beforehand, but he didn't. It doesn't matter. He looked at the music of the first violin, and he said, these bowings, you know, the bowings that they play, are not very good. And I'm sitting here in the orchestra, and I said, I want to become a conductor. I wouldn't know a bad bowing if it came in and hit me in the face. And that was a real epiphany for me when I discovered I had better learn something about string instruments if I'm going to become a conductor. And so I ultimately wound up taking up the viola, which serves not only learning the viola, and they don't play high notes as much, but also you learn the alto clef, which is a different clef that they play in other than G clef or the treble or bass. So the alto clef that they play as well. So that was an important moment to me. So, you know, I definitely was interested in conducting, but you get these moments in life where you say, wow, I got a lot to learn. And that was definitely one of them. I think there was a question on the chat box.
Yes, Carl. Someone asked, what specific skills do you need to successfully conduct?
Oy, where do we start? I'm going to tell one more story, and then I'll go to that. When I was playing an orchestra over there, one of the oboe players liked to talk about himself and how wonderful he was. Another oboe player, maybe a year or two younger than me, was very, very quiet. Really very, you know, didn't have a lot to say. And I'm listening to this guy play, and I'm saying, my gosh, this is amazing playing. And we were playing a piece. He played a solo in rehearsal, and I imitated him on the clarinet. I was sitting behind him. I played exactly the way he phrased it. He turned around and he went like this to me. You remember stuff like that. Anyway, turned out it was Dick Woodhams, who at age 19, I believe, became principal oboe of St. Louis, and at maybe 21 was principal oboe with Philadelphia Orchestra for 45 years. So that was a very, you know, just a sort of story. Now, how do you become a conductor? Well, we got 5 more episodes of this. How did I break into conducting? That's also interesting as well. This is something I always wanted to do. The clarinet has a lot of things which are not terribly interesting to me, especially reeds. Now, I play plastic reeds, so I don't worry about them too much. But that was maybe 15 years ago I started using them. Before then, wooden reeds was what people used. And wooden reeds, they chip, they warp, that from one day to the next, they could change with the weather. And reeds are they're expensive and annoying. There are millions of kinds of mouthpieces. There are ligatures, barrels. There's so much to the clarinet that unfortunately has not a lot to do with music. So I knew that I want to expand beyond playing the clarinet. And I knew that conducting was something I wanted to do because I have this real passion for music, and just following one line of the score was not really very interesting when you could be following 20. And that to me was always very fascinating. The other problem was in clarinet playing, or in playing in music in general, something called staccato. Which is separated notes. So people are born with fast staccatos, or they're not. You can develop your staccato up to a certain point, but I had like the slowest staccato. And I knew that I could never play Midsummer Night's Dream by Mendelssohn. I was actually taken off a part once because I couldn't play it fast enough. And Barter Bride Overture by Smedna, completely out of the question. Semiramide Overture by Rossini. So I just discovered at that point that being a symphonic clarinet player was not something I could do, because I couldn't spend my whole life wondering how I was going to get through this piece. There are some clarinet players who've learned how to double tongue, and I haven't been able to. Jorge, can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to use you as a case in point. Okay, so my single tongue was like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dum. Now he's a pianist. Let me hear how fast you can single tongue, Jorge.
Single tongue is like
You can go faster than that, can't you? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
I think just a little bit. Let's see. I think that's the
Okay, now he can single tongue as fast as I can, and he's never played the clarinet, which is depressing enough. But I remember my student Jason, who was a conductor. He plays the violin. He had a ridiculously fast single tongue, totally useless. And it's not making excuses. You know, it's like if you play the French horn and you don't have good chops, or if you play the piano and you can't reach an octave, there are physical limitations. Or if you want to play basketball and you're 5'8", I mean, you know, there are things that do get in the way. So, so I knew that I wanted to be, that this is clarinet in the orchestra was not going to be an option for me, unfortunately. So I wound up really, since I had this great passion for orchestral music, that I really wanted to do this. And I remember I conducted the Star Spangled Banner for my high school band, and then I got to conduct Coriolanus Overture with the community orchestra in Bayonne. And then after, well, to answer a question also, there is no real path to become. Every conductor has his or her or their, I'm learning, you don't have to say his or her, you can say their own path to becoming a conductor. There is no one way. The only sort of standard way, and two of my students are doing this now, they went to Germany and they became répétateurs, which means they play the piano for singers, they coach singers, and they often can take over a production after it started. So that's sort of the standard way, if there is one. And that's only, I mean, Jorge, did you know Johan? Was he in your class?
Yeah, he was in my class. Yeah.
Johan was unbelievable. He played the piano. He could play the entire, like, Marriage of Figaro, sing all the parts, and he was able to land a position in, and through a connection that he made through me, he was able to make a connection and has a job in Germany. He's unfortunately on hold now. I have another student, can't remember what town he's in, Augsburg maybe, and he has a career as the Kapellmeister. I guess he trains the chorus, he coaches the singers, and he gets to do some conducting, like the second conductor of the production after it gets going. So that's the only sort of standard way. Otherwise, what did I do? I wound up in, I mean, fact is stranger than fiction, okay? I wound up somehow, I don't even remember how I got this connection, working with something called the Rufino Opera Company in Greenwich Village on McDougal Street in New York. And it was a theater that seated maybe 50, 60 people with a small stage, and people would sing roles. They would pay to sing roles, and I became one of the conductors, and the rehearsals were with piano. And then for performance, we might have a string, maybe a string quartet and a couple of wind instruments with no rehearsal. So you learn to be really, really clear. So that was really, I mean, if you can imagine that I conducted Aida on this tiny stage with no chorus, cutting around the chorus, of course. There were no pyramids, and it was very bare bones. But this gave me the opportunity to conduct whatever, Aida, Rigoletto, La Traviata, Trovatore, Lucia, Bohème, Tosca, Butterfly, Barber Seville, all these operas. And like I said, you just learn to be so clear because you had no choice. Otherwise, the whole thing would fall apart. So that was that experience doing this stuff. And I got a chance to do Don Carlo, of all things, with orchestra. I think it was in Town Hall. I did Marriage of Figaro at maybe a high school someplace, and we went to pick up the bass player, and he wasn't there. I mean, this sort of insane stuff that you remember, and put together a chamber group of some players to do Soldier's Tale by Stravinsky. I even in Bayonne, New Jersey, I put together a performance of La Bohème with my friends, carpooling. Maybe they got paid $25 or something to play. And I remember, in the first act of La Bohème, there's a stove on the stage. And that's how they stayed warm, with the stove. And so before, I remember pushing the stove onto the stage. And I said, this is whatever you have to do. I have a very dear friend. She teaches at Beechwood High School, and she plays in the Pops. She and her husband are very dear friends. And she said this, Jorge, I probably told you the students this as well. If you won't move if you're not going to move chairs and stands, don't become a conductor. That's what she taught me. And she's absolutely right. So anyway, so this is sort of, we're up to a certain point in the book. And Pat, I probably didn't answer your question, but it's a matter of creating opportunities for yourself, believing that you actually have some talent. Because what happened after school, I wound up getting a master's in music education. I taught a year at Portchester, New York, instrumental elementary school, instrumental music, a year in the Bronx, teaching junior high, band one semester and strings another semester. And thank you, Pat. That's very sweet. I appreciate it. And then people told me, listen, you can always go back to teach, but if you want to become a conductor, this is the time. And so I gave up my teaching. I had my certificate and I gave it up. I played saxophone gigs. I did some part-time teaching of all things, the little tonettes, the recorders. I taught tonette in the South Bronx. So like I said, at this point, it didn't look like a great conducting career was going to evolve out of this. But I guess this is to be continued. And I can explain, but it took a lot of initiative, a lot of belief in yourself, plus the training, which I can get into next time. I don't want to give the whole thing away right away because there's a lot more to come.